It has been 7 months since the 2020 presidential election was decided, but in Arizona, well, the votes are still being recounted. Again. It's part of an unprecedented audit of votes in the state's largest county, and the Republican-led state Senate just extended it by another month. The findings won't change the election results at all, but it's being closely watched by former President Trump and being used by right-wing groups to push baseless claims of election fraud. Kris Van Cleave has more.
Outside the Arizona State House, the battle over the 2020 presidential election is still raging. And far from over because of the work being done across town at these 46 tables where workers are hand recounting nearly 2.1 million ballots, some being tallied in as little as 6 seconds.
This has nothing to do with going back and trying to change the results of the November 2020 election.
This is an up-close look at Arizona's partisan election audit ordered by the GOP-held state Senate and run by Cyber Ninja, a private company whose CEO promoted election conspiracy theories on Twitter. They fought to keep audit procedures secret and initially tried to keep media out. Observers noticed workers checking ballots with UV lights, looking for a watermark rumored to be a sign of fraud. We watched them photograph ballots, looking for folds and checking the thickness of paper. Some are said to be looking for signs of bamboo fibers on the ballots, which election officials have dismissed as part of a conspiracy theory. Ken Bennett is monitoring the election for the state Senate.
The UV light plays into a QAnon conspiracy theory. The bamboo hunt plays into this allegation that thousands of ballots were flown in from Asia after the election and somehow counted. I mean, it's silly.
And if that didn't happen, then we will dispel that.
Do you really think thousands of ballots were flown in from Asia?
No,
okay.
I don't personally, but there are a lot of people that do or did.
This so-called audit is making a mockery of our election.
Katie Hobbs, the Democratic Secretary of State, is receiving death threats over her opposition to the audit. She welcomed a letter from the Department of Justice warning it may be violating election laws, but worries Arizona won't be the last state to see such an effort.
I'm very concerned that this sideshow becomes the first domino to fall. I know my colleagues around the country are feeling the same way.
There is no evidence of widespread voter fraud in Arizona. The results were validated in a partial recount, and 2 extra audits found no issues.
Do you think the county got it wrong?
I think checking is appropriate, and that's what we're doing.
State Senator Michelle Ugenti-Rita was among the 16 Republicans who voted for this outside review.
How do you think the recount is going so far?
I think it's going well. You know, it's been some ups and downs, and that's to be expected. The scale of it is quite large. We're looking at the equipment, the technology, the software, the machines, the ballots themselves. And so I'm very anxious and eager to get the results.
This was a clown show.
Grant Woods is a former Republican Arizona Attorney General. He left the GOP during Mr. Trump's presidency.
This is hurting our democracy. The state Senate should know that, and they should call it off. If they won't do it, the Department of Justice needs to step in.
The audit says they've looked at about a quarter of the ballots, but they're going to have to pause everything after today, move everything out because the Coliseum has been rented for high school graduations for the next week. That's raising some questions about ballot security. The audit says they're going to be kept nearby under 24-hour armed guard. And then when the graduations are done, they're going to move back into the Coliseum. If they're not done with the audit by the end of June, they'll have to move out again to make room for a gun show. Anne-Marie?
Oh my God, Kris. You know, you mentioned that this bamboo fiber hunt is part of a conspiracy theory, but the reality of it is you could have asked him about all of that. It's all part of a conspiracy theory because there's no evidence of widespread fraud and these ballots have already been recounted. And it's not going to change anything. The outcome of the election is what it is. Joe Biden has been the president for the last almost 5 months now. So I guess the question is, why do it if it's not going to change the outcome of the election? And why choose to audit just the 2 big races in the state that were won by Democrats?
So if you are an audit supporter, what you say, what the answer to that was that, look, they want to go through and do an after action and make sure that everything worked right, that the counting machines were accurate, that all of the votes that were cast and counted were ballots that were actually cast by real people, that there were no counting issues, there was no fraud, even though we haven't seen any evidence of widespread fraud. There were a bunch of court battles over the election here in Arizona. They were unsuccessful. There were 2 partial audits. There was a partial recount here. The vote was certified by all of the steps, by the Republican led county here, Maricopa County. It was signed by the Republican governor. But there are still a lot of people here that were pushing the state Senate to open this up and look at it. Now, if you're a critic of this audit, you say you're doing it because you want to continue to undermine confidence in the election, that you want to continue to push the narrative that the election was stolen. Of course, we've seen no evidence of that, and that there's concern from the critics of the audit that this will be used as a playbook to do the same thing in other states and just sort of whittle away at the confidence Americans have in the election and the elective process.
Right. The company that's doing this is a private company. Their name is Cyber Ninja. Of course, there are concerns. You have a private company now with access to not only the public information about voters, but also private data about them as well. And when you describe that if they don't, wrap things up in time, they're going to have to move everything out, then move it back in, then maybe move it out again, I just think of, these ballots being moved around, boxed. It just seems like, a recipe for potential problems or at least questions. I'm wondering, is there any oversight? Who's making sure that this company protects voters' data, treats these ballots the way they should be treated, that there isn't any privacy leak? I mean, just who's overseeing this process?
So the Cyber Ninja company, think of them as sort of the general contractor. They have brought in other contractors that are involved in this audit. You've Ken Bennett, who is a former Secretary of State here. He was in our story. He's a Republican. He is the liaison with the state Senate, so he's one of the observers. The state Senate is in a sense overseeing it through Ken, but there is not a election monitor, an independent election monitor, if you will, outside of him and a couple of people he's brought in to work with him. So that is a very fair question. It's part of why you've seen this letter from the Department of Justice. The Secretary of State here has expressed concerns. She is a Democrat, so Republicans say that this is part of her effort to raise her profile. She says she's just trying to protect the integrity of the elections in Arizona, which is what she was elected to do. But this chain of custody, that's going to be one of the things that's going to be a lingering question here. And you have a battle going on between Maricopa County, which is a solidly Republican county as far as the Board of Supervisors, with the Republican-led state Senate. They're still fighting over access to information that includes passwords to wireless routers and systems inside Maricopa County. The sheriff, who is a Democrat, has called this reckless, mind-numbingly reckless, because it might mean that these companies end up with access to sheriff's department systems. So there is still a real fight going on between even Republicans inside of Maricopa County about this audit, and there remain questions about ballot security. Now, people doing the audit say that they are watching out for privacy, that they are making sure that the chain of custody is maintained. Ken Bennett signed out all of the ballots, nearly 2.1 million of them, but there are going to be questions when this audit is done about the methodology, and you're going to have two camps of people: the people that wanted this audit, that are going to believe it, and you're going to have the people that oppose this audit, that have pointed to a laundry list of potential issues that prompted this DOJ letter of concern, that they're going to say that this is meaningless, and that's, I think, where we're going to end up.
I think you are spot on, Kris. That's exactly what I was thinking. I thought someone's spending an awful lot of money to get answers, and no matter what answers we get, there are people who are not going to believe the outcome. It's a sort of a bottomless
Marie, this is
rabbit hole.
Very much so, and sorry to interrupt you, but this is important. We also don't know who is paying for the audit. Taxpayers here in Arizona are paying for a portion of it, but who's funding the rest of it? We don't know. That hasn't been released yet. Ken Bennett, the former Secretary of State, who's working with the state Senate, said he hopes that information is made public, but we don't know who's paying for it.
Yeah, and that's a really good question to ask, and I know you and other reporters are going to keep asking till we get that answer. Kris Van Cleave, thank you so much.
Sure thing.